This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Always like to, get news from my inside sources. I always like to bring Cam in. Cam covers the Browns. She also does work for News 5 in Cleveland. Cam, coming off of this victory in Cincinnati, my question is kind of a retrospective one. Thinking back, were you at a point with their team's confidence level going into this game where you felt like they're not surprised by what happened on Sunday?
Absolutely not. I wasn't surprised. I feel like I've been preaching to the choir. Like, what we saw in that game is exactly what I expected. Now, it was a lot more exciting than I maybe anticipated. But the one thing that I was sure about, I've been sure about it all summer, is that the Browns defense is legit. Jim Schwartz is legit. I think he's the one thing that you can have full trust in because he's proven it on other teams throughout his career that he can have dominating defenses. And the buy-in was so strong. The guys on this team they've been raving about what Jim Schwartz is giving them. And you have that mix of a guy that has that proven track record and you know what he's able to do, and a group of talented guys, a roster that's been revamped who have bought into that and want to play hard for him. It had to be successful. Like, to me, there was no other way that the Browns defense wasn't going to be successful because you could see it. The offense was where I had question marks of, like DeJuan, where he's going to be, that connection with his receivers, how Kevin Stefanski and AVP were going to work on the play calling. And I will say I was pleasantly surprised with most of the offense. It was a weird day. Weather-wise, obviously, nobody kind of saw that coming, and it wasn't rain. Like, that's what made it weird. I think that's what made it weird. And it's a heavy rain game. You can kind of change it up. Like, it was this weird mist that wasn't actual raindrops. It was just wet and gross.
Remember in 2019 when they played the Patriots?
Yes.
And it was another weird game like that where they had
that.
like Nick Chubb fumbled like two times in that game.
And it was weird because of that weather. It's like it's not weather that you can, prepare for in practice, whether like it's sheet rain or anything like that. It's just this weird mist that you can't really do much, but it like drenched that ball. So I will say I was pleasantly surprised with. I've always thought Kevin Stefanski was a better play caller than he got credit for. Obviously, he makes some decisions sometimes, like the crunch time. I think that's where he has room to grow, and that's what I'm looking forward to this season. But I've always thought that he got a lot more slack for what he was doing out there on the field. So if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I like what he was able to do, the adjustments that he made from halftime with that weather in mind. But I also like that Deshaun Watson had some moments too. Now, obviously, it wasn't perfect, and you want that to be better. You'll see what happens with different weather conditions. Although in Pittsburgh, it is supposed to be raining, so I don't know. I want just some dry weather, but he had some passes. The pass to Donovan Peoples-Jones, I just think of that. Like, that is what I can see Deshaun Watson doing regularly. The ones that shocked me were that deep ball to Marquise Goodwin. It was short. Some of those low passes. He hits that pass to Marquise Goodwin in practice all the time. I mean, all the time. And it's a perfectly dropped ball. He knows his route. Like, he knows his speed. He knows that, like, he knows how to hit him. And so that was a little weird. And so I do think the weather did play into it because, most of the time in practice, it's not against a big pass rush or anything like that. But he can anticipate Marquise Goodwin's speed and where he's going to be and how he likes the ball placed. That is something that they have gotten down pretty well. So I do think the weather played into it. That ball was maybe a little bit heavier than he thought. That's why it was a little short. But overall, I think the offense, it showed moments of what it can be. And that to me was, that's a good first step, but not surprised with how this kind of went. It was a little rocky on offense. Defense was dominant, and they fixed their special teams issues, and Dustin Hopkins was consistent. That's
And
what you want.
And you had Joe Burrow on the other side, and he was not able to find any of the success. Did not have a single throw where you were like, okay, that's a Joe Burrow throw. It was just a rough day for him all around. And then you go on the other side and you see DeJuan was able to do it. And I think that speaks to the skill set, right? It was a thing that we joked about coming out the draft with Joe Burrow. Oh, he has small hands, this, that, and the third, and that's going to affect him in bad weather games. And we've seen it's not really affected him in most bad weather situations. I think this was a unique one, right? He's coming off that calf strain all summer. He did not practice in training. Well, he just didn't practice, right? The preseason games, that doesn't matter as much, but like the reps that he missed for like 2 months, that actually does matter, right? Because you're talking about a new offensive line trying to get pass sets in. They don't know where Joe Burrow's supposed to be at, right? They don't know what their landmarks are because he hasn't been there all month. And then he steps in there and it's not just like raining, it's moist. It was a weird day for somebody to try to throw the football to the point where he had to break down, get a glove. And once you're doing that and you're down like 16, it just, you know how that feels. Like it just is what it is. But yeah, DeJuan found a way to have some success. And that speaks to like why they went out and traded for him, right? Because, hey, things ain't going right. We can't throw the ball. Okay, DeJuan, make something happen, right? Run with the ball. Keep the offense on the field. Let's convert on some of these third downs. Let's find a way to do it. They weren't 2 and 15 or whatever it was the Bengals were from third down. Like, they were able to figure it out somewhat to be able to put points on the board. And it was so weird seeing, because we've seen it so many times where the Browns will go up 20, the Browns will go up 14. And remember, it was like there's nothing more dangerous for the Cleveland Browns than going up by 3 scores, right? That used to be the joke, where it's like every time we go up 3 scores, that's when the offense starts, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the pivotal moment in that game, obviously, for everybody's mental and for the fans, was that Myles Garrett sack on 4th and 2. Yeah. Because we have seen that play where it's 4th and 2. We're up on the Steelers. We think this is going to finally be the year we beat Pittsburgh. And Ben finds a way to convert on 4th and 2. And then dinks, dunks, scores. And we're about to go 3 and out on offense. And this game's going to be tied with like 5 minutes left in the game.
That was the beauty of this game. It just felt that, right? Like a little different. It wasn't dominating on all, in all 3 phases of the game. It was a very, very solid effort on special teams, an incredible dominating effort on defense, and then a serviceable effort on offense. And that's the difference, is nobody dropped the ball, right? Like you could want more out of the offense, and you do hope that they step that up in the next couple weeks. But they did what they needed to do to win. And that's coming from DeJuan. That's coming from his receivers. That's coming from Kevin Stefanski and the play calls that he was putting out there. It was different. It was and they had every opportunity to lose that game because you know how Cleveland operates in the past.
And remember
how that goes. It's just it's a little bit of bad luck, a little bit of nerves, a little bit of stress, and the weight of that season opener, home opener game. There's all these streaks that need to be broken, right? Mm-hmm. And that I think does weigh on him a little bit, but to see it just say, okay, we're gonna forget that streak and we're just gonna get out here and play the way that we want to play. I think they did that, and that was a little surprising to me because I'm not used to seeing that. I don't know if anyone's really used to seeing that.
As much as the offense wasn't what we wanted it to be, it didn't leave the defense hanging, right? That happened all the time last year. The defense, remember the Atlanta game where the defense just completely left the Browns offense hanging, like just could not find a way to convert, could not find a way to just get anything done. There have been games where the Browns offense, it just couldn't do anything. Just the defense is doing all they could. I think back to that was it the first Baltimore game last year, the one where they lost because Amari Cooper got the OPI, where we just couldn't do it. The defense held Baltimore like 60 yards on offense. Remember the 4 interception Lamar Jackson game that we somehow found a way to lose? Okay, in 2021? Like, people can make as little a deal of what the offense did and can nitpick the numbers as much as they want. It's not about the numbers. It's the fact that they played complementary football, right? The defense carried the banner. So the offense figured out a way to make sure that the defense gets rewarded for carrying out the banner. We're not going to give you a bunch of 3-and-outs. We're going to hold this ball for a little bit. Even if we had to punt, we're going to get a couple first downs on the ground. We're going to allow you time to rest, not put you out there for a ridiculous amount of possessions, and allow you to continue to dominate. Now, moving towards this week, Monday Night Football versus Pittsburgh. Crazy 2 division games back to back to start the year. In Pittsburgh, it's supposed to rain on Monday. It's a national TV game. We saw what Kenny Pickett looked like, and they're going to be without Deontay Johnson. They're going to be without Cam Hayward, but still they have Minka. Still they have TJ Watt. DeJuan Jones is in there. A lot of talk has been about what is he going to be prepared to do going in there. How do you, what's the feeling that you get from the rest of this team, given that they're going to have a rookie right tackle? Do they feel pretty confident in this guy, or is it kind of one of those, we got to wait and see what they think you're going to get with him?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of confidence in DeJuan Jones because, one, you can't teach size. You just can't. He is a brick wall. But the way he moves is just, if you watch him, if you just focus in a game on DeJuan Jones when he is on that line, it doesn't make sense the way that kid moves. For his size, he is so agile. He is so athletic. and it's crazy to me because I don't feel like he should move at that size, but he's got really, really good body movement. And the fact that he's able to do that, you can't teach that. Mm-hmm. Now, what you can't, the issue that he was having, his rookie issues, I say issues, and I don't mean that in a negative because every rookie has room to grow, right? But for him, the 2 things were the technique of his hand placement. He had a lot of holds in practice. Just that technique, and I think those holds were a part of the second problem, which was the conditioning. He was getting tired very easily. I really like what the Browns did with him in the preseason, playing him all the time, like every snap, because that is how you condition a guy. And I think he is ready for this moment. It is a tough challenge. It's not, I don't know that they expected to do that. And they brought a vet in today. Maybe that helps like get that leadership up, but I do think that he's ready to have this kind of role and to see what he's able to do because he's got attributes that are unmatched by other people in this league. You can't give them to people. That size is just unbelievable in the way that he is able to move on that line. And then if you add to that his ability to learn and grow from Bill Callahan, from the veterans, Jack Conklin teaching him too. And they said, Jack Conklin's going to be back in that room as soon as he's done with surgery and like able to be back in the building. So he's going to be coached up very well. I think if anything, you can trust in Bill Callahan. I think he's one of the best coaches in any position. He's very, very good at what he does. And so for DeJuan Jones to be coached by a tough and smart guy, Scott Peters too, like he's got really, really good teachers who are holding him accountable. And I think that the biggest thing for him will be his ability to play in a full regular season hard game. That's like the conditioning that it will take. And I think that they've done a really nice job of making sure that they have worked on that with him. So now it's a matter of seeing it happen. But I think that there's a lot of confidence that he can do it and a lot of confidence that, it won't be a big drop off. I think if anything, it might be a real, if he can take these steps that they want him to, it could be something that is an improvement, especially Jack Conklin. He's a very good offensive lineman. Just the inconsistency of his injury history. He's injured a lot and it's really unfortunate to see. But if you can get a guy that's consistently out there and isn't prone to those injuries and you can rely on him, if DeJuan Jones can take those steps, I think you might have found something really, really special. And I already thought that they found something special in DeJuan Jones in the draft. But if he's able to do this and live up to this test that they're asking for him now, starting in regular season games, rookie year against some tough opponents, the Bengals, now the Steelers, you've got a loaded schedule early. I think that proves that they found something, and we'll have to see. But I think there's a lot of promise there, and I think there's a lot of confidence in him.
I know people like my guy Vach Lombardi, he does film breakdowns for The Volume, and he always says DeJuan Jones was the best offensive tackle in this class. Like he was his offensive tackle number one. Now I don't know. I don't know exactly what happened in the pre-draft process to drop him to the 4th round, but it seems like he's figured out whatever he needed to figure out. But one thing that I think has happened under the radar of the national media, of a lot of people, is the fact that the Browns have been building a program here for a while. And I talked about, like, the media hasn't caught up with where the Browns are as an organization because they're so caught up with the record, and the record hasn't necessarily caught up with what they've been as an organization. And what they've been is very stable. You look at this roster, almost all of these guys have been here forever, right? Like you look at the guys, like there's a lot of guys from 2018, 2019 here. A lot of their draft picks have developed into, and you start to see those things start to bear fruit on Sunday because you're like, okay, you're getting guys stepping up in the program, basically, right? It felt like a real program. We're like, oh, Grant Delpit finally in the position to do something that he needs to do. Martin Emerson stepping up, playing outside corner, being very good in that role, right? JOK, and you're like, okay, all of a sudden these drafts that were criticized, we're talking about these draft picks now as the guys who are truly standing out versus the Cincinnati Bengals. And part of the reason why you were able to suffocate them so much, on top of the defensive pressure you were able to create, because Myles Garrett is a god of football, right? Like he's just one of the best to ever do it. And that just is what it is there. But that's what I mean with this team feeling different. It's like, oh, this is a program. Like if something goes wrong with the Browns and if the big free agent signing can't stay healthy, like, okay, they have options to go to. They're not just like, woe is me, or one thing didn't work. They've been here. They've been working on this for 4 or 5 years. They have young guys who could step up. And I think, you know, when people do the Cleveland is Cleveland, same old Browns thing, that's what they're missing is, for a very long time, this has not really been the same program. Like this has been ran, like anybody who's covered this team before 2020 has seen the difference in just how much more sound guys get drafted with plans. Like DeJuan Jones, that would have never happened where somebody's like, hey, DeJuan Jones, he has a little, we're just going to play him all preseason and do something with him. That's stuff that like the Steelers used to do to get somebody ready and be like, oh, look at them, it works out. Now we're doing that stuff, right? Now we're taking an Elijah Moore and getting him right. Now we're taking a Zadarius Smith and putting him in the right situation. How many of these situations in the past used to happen from the Browns to like the Patriots, where it's like, oh, they took Danny Shelton and turned him into a starter. You know, how many, or TJ Ward goes to Denver, becomes a starter. Tashawn Gibson still playing football, right? This used to happen to us. Now we're kind of doing it the opposite end because this is a program. They have plans. They know what they're supposed to do. They have competent coaching. It's so hard for people to believe because of what the Browns have put out over the last like 26 years or whatever it is. But this is a good football team. And anybody who's been around it is like, no, this is a good team. I don't see this team really imploding. This is going to be a really good football team.
I think that's the strength of this organization, the way that it's been built. And I think that it's easy to get lost on of what this team has become, because the go-to every time is, you know, with failures. In 2021, Baker gets injured. Okay, like 2020, great year, right? Mm-hmm. Wow. This is it. Everyone has faith in the changes that they made with bringing Andrew Berry in, bringing Kevin Stefanski in, and all these different changes. 2021, Baker Mayfield gets hurt. Things start to kind of spiral. And then last year you make a shift. You figure, okay, this isn't it. And they made a shift. And it was a clear message that they want to win and they will do whatever it takes in mm-hmm. what makes sense to them to do it. And I think that what gets lost in all of this is when there are struggles with the injury in 2021, with the Deshaun suspension and the kind of mix up of 11 games, him not there, although Kevin Stefanski did a great job of getting the best out of Jacoby Brissett. But like, you know, Joe Wood's defense just like wasn't where it needed to be. It's, you know, Prefer's special team coverage wasn't where it needed to be. And I think what gets lost in all of this is that over the years, when things get tough, the first move is to fire everyone. Fire everyone. And I think a lot of fans still think that way. It's like, okay, if things get rough, we need to bring somebody else in. I think what works for this organization is the core of that culture, the identity of this team. They have an identity. They've said it. They know they've got parameters in which they value draft picks and in which they value free agent signings. They do a very good job of getting the best value out of guys and finding those hidden gem free agent signings and turning it around and introducing them into the culture that they created and getting that out of them. And I do think they found a lot of gems, and that hasn't always happened. Sometimes you luck into a guy, you take the first pick, you get, if you're a bad football team, you get the first, you draft high and you get talent no matter what, because they're at the top of the draft, and that's great. Andrew Berry, with the way that he drafts now and the way that he's valued draft picks, he sends all his first round picks to get Deshaun Watson. Now you got to get creative. Now you got to find gems late in the draft, and you see it in this year's draft. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is like the prime example. You know how many teams are looking at him right now? The Jets, probably one of them. Like, we wish we had a Dorian Thompson-Robinson as our QB2 right now. These are the kinds of things that I think gets lost. So I know it's easy things happen in a football season, and sometimes it's out of your control, and sometimes you can't account for it and you just have to roll with the punches. But at its core, I really, truly believe that like Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski were two really, really solid pieces for this team. And now add on top of that, having Jim Schwartz as your defensive coordinator, I think that takes you above and beyond. And I think Bubba Ventrone is the perfect kind of guy for the special teams, a past player. He's very, very good when he talks to them and coaches them. I think that the core to me is Andrew Berry at the helm. I think was one of the best things the Browns did. I think he's a very, very good GM, and I think he's done things very, very well and established this identity for the Browns. And as much slack as he gets, I really do believe that Kevin Stefanski is a very good football coach for this team. And I think it would be a mistake to move on from Kevin. I know a lot of people are like, oh, bad play call, lost game, get rid of him. I don't think that's the case. I think that he is a very good head coach and has the potential to lead this team. I think the 2020 version of Kevin Stefanski is who he is. 2021 had that weird, rough, bad luck. 2022, well, we know how that worked out. And I think for what it was, I think what Kevin Stefanski did with the offense, and he's more offensive minded than defensive minded. And I think that was good for what it could be. And now here you are, 2023, you keep him offensive minded, you keep him doing what he does best, working with Alex Van Pelt. And then you have Jim Schwartz, who is a breed of his own, leading that defense. I think that there is no reason that this team should not be dominant week in and week out. Now, there obviously are some things, but I think they found their identity. And I really do believe that this is probably one of the best run versions of the Cleveland Browns, if not the best, in who knows how long. I mean, it hasn't been like this in a really long time, where you can have confidence from the top down in different guys. And even when someone fails, think, okay, well, somebody else can step up and they'll figure out, like, there's always an answer.
Ronnie Hickman, an undrafted free agent, played 10 snaps yesterday, right? Like, they found a way to plug him in. And the last thing I'll say before we head out here is, think about how small the margin of error felt like it was with this team in order to win a football game, let alone win a football game that people don't think you should win, right? Cincinnati Bengals been to the AFC Championship game 2 times. Browns were 7-10 last year. People didn't think the Browns should win that. And usually the margin there is this thin. Oh, we can't mess up. We can't have a turnover. We can't not get points here, right? If we don't do those things, we're used to that being what cost the Browns the game. The Browns kicked a lot of field goals in that game. The Browns turned it over 2 times, and they still were able to win by 3 touchdowns. they have a massive margin of error that you usually only deal with. Like, how many times the Browns been on the other side of that margin of error where, oh man, Aaron Rodgers threw 2 picks, fumbled the ball, we're still down by 10, right? Like, the margin of error just seems so large for this team that they were able to figure it out. And then they figured it out before the other team figured it out, despite the fact that they weren't playing well to begin with, right? Turned over the ball, a fumble, an interception. And they still were able to get out of it because they have so much going for them. That defense, if it plays like that for the rest of the year, that could be the best defense in the NFL. I'm not even being hyperbolic about it. No, and the thing that I think has gone under the radar is that Nick Chubb in that run game looked better than it did last year, especially versus DJ Reader. Remember, he blew up that run scheme last year versus the Browns. They figured out a way to evolve that run scheme. And if Deshaun Watson looks like he did in camp with this passing attack, then that could be one of the best offenses in the NFL, because we've seen the rushing games weren't impressive on Sunday, but for like 2 teams. And it's like, imagine the San Francisco 49ers, but with better talent on every level. And that's what you have with the Cleveland Browns.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the beauty of it too, is the versatility they've created. Nick Chubb, not only in that run game and using him in the way that Nick Chubb does Nick Chubb things, we know what he's capable of. But we saw it in practice throughout training camp, that work on getting him involved in the passing game. You saw it in week 1. I think then you make Nick Chubb a passing threat. You make him a running threat. Deshaun Watson's a running threat. Elijah Moore's a running threat. Elijah Moore's a passing threat. You don't know what this offense is capable of at any given moment on that line, even how guys are lined up. Elijah Moore lined up in the backfield, could be a handoff to Elijah Moore. Could not be. Could be a scramble from Deshaun. Could not be. Who's to say? That is what this offense's strength has become. And it's really good to see. Now, this is week 1. So we're, I'll pump the brakes on myself a little bit, but this was not a surprise. So the fact that like this is what I kind of expected, just it was kind of tenfold to what I thought was going to happen. It was even better than I pictured it coming out on week 1.
Because we had talked about this defensive line looking like that without really getting to see much of Myles Garrett in camp with them. And now we see, they don't just have Myles Garrett. They have Myles Garrett doing crossovers. Okay, it's like, what happens when they just get the play off of It's like almost seeing, it's like the first time you saw LeBron with D Wade and Chris Bosh. You're like, he just gets to run plays now. Like it's like he doesn't have to fight through 5 screens to get the ball. He just gets to run a play off rip. And it's like, there's nothing you can do about that. There's so much we could talk for like hours about the Cleveland Browns right now, but it's always fun to hear what Cam has to say and get the insight there. Cam, thank you for coming on. Anything you want to say before we head out?
No, I'm going to ask Myles about that crossover. I need to know more, and I need to see more of him lined up and giving me some basketball moves on the football field. That was wild.
I need to see him do the right to left, left to right Kyrie game winner. Like he needs to, get that one worked out.
All I wanted that to be a sack. I wanted him to get that sack, stand up, and just like hit a fadeaway.
Do a layup. Yeah, he's got to hit one of those. You know what I mean? But it's going to be a fun year. I really believe in that. I think this is going to be a really good Browns team. Thank you for coming on, Cam. You guys at home, thank you for watching. You guys have an even better day.